Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Maharaj Ji, are you there? Are you here?
Yes, Maharaj.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yeah, it's 4:32 in the morning here. We're renouncing Mangal Artik. With the Anjana Sudha Academy, we have a daily online full morning program. If you go to our webpage, you can find it there. And I'm just saying that I'm remembering one purport. Prabhupada says, a sannyasi should not renounce Mangal Artik in his renunciation. But anyway, I sang the Gurvastika while I was ironing my clothes. Okay. So, so shall we begin here?
Yes, Maharaj. Very happy to see you, Maharaj. Yesterday could not have your darshan, but today very nice to have your darshan.
A very dark complexioned man came to my ashram yesterday with a peacock. I don't think he had a peacock feather in his hat, but he installed a cable. So I've gone from an upload speed of 2 megabytes per second to 500 megabytes per second. So it may work. I don't know. Okay. So here, let's sing a little song here. Very famous song. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. You're supposed to respond. I can't hear you.
Kunja
Gopi Janabala. Okay. Gopi Janabala Girivaradari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Gopi Janabalama Girivaradari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Shishira Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Bhakti Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Avrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srahada Thakur ki jai. Prime Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Hari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavana Mayapur Dham Kshetra Dham Jagannath Puri Jagannath Paradi Subhadra ki jai. Shri Shri Brihat Mridanga Kali Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Shri Guru Guranga.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Let me tell one little history about that song, as far as I know it. The first time that Prabhupada sang it, I think, was in Jhansi, no, where the Gita press is. And so as I know the story, the Prabhupada went back to India with the disciples, and eventually he came to, was it Jhansi? No, where was it? It's Gorakhpur, isn't it? Gita press. Yeah, I think Gita press is in Gorakhpur. That's where it is. Yeah, okay. So he went to Gorakhpur, and they received Prabhupada very nicely with the devotees, and they said, "Oh, Swamiji, make your base here in India. We'll give you, accommodations, a building." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, we will think about it." And he said, "Where is Hanumatpresaka Swami?" Okay. So Prabhupada, when he was starting, trying to start the movement, he had his manuscripts, I think, and he went and saw Hanumatpresaka Swami in the Gita press, because Hanumatpresaka Swami had started the Gita press, and he asked him if he could print, the Bhagavatam. He left the manuscript, and then Hanumatpresaka Swami, and the next, maybe a few days later, a week later, or something, he came back, and Hanumatpresaka Swami was very enthusiastic. He said, "It's wonderful, wonderful contribution like this translation." And he said, "But I'm not managing the press anymore. I'm old. And as far as I know, all of their funds are tied up for quite some time for different, printing obligations like that." He said, "But here is the name of a press, and maybe he give an introductory letter." It was the OK Press, in wherever it is, Chippiwada in Delhi there, and they've helped us a lot of times. Then he gave 100 rupees donation, which in those days for a sadhu was a considerable amount of money. It was a good donation. Suniya Prabhupada went to the AOK press with Hanumatprasad's letter, and then they said, "Okay, we'll charge you the bare minimum we can charge, like for ink and things like that, and let you do the collating, everything else." And so, we have a lot of debt to Hanumatpresaka. He was a very famous person in India. If you go to the Janmabhoomi in Mathura, there's a very, very big palatial temple there. And in the back of the thing, there's a little area where there's 3 life-size statues of Hanumatpresaka, Birla, and Malviya. And they were the 3 people who pushed the construction, solicited the funds, everything else. And he was very famous for his being good devotee, and and having different mystical experiences, publishing his magazine. So during his life, he said that he had an experience. So anyway, when they were there, okay, so it describes in Lilamrita, Satsuru Maharaj describes that they went up to Hanumatpresaka room. It was on the 2nd floor. And Babaji was very, very sick. He weak, couldn't even push himself up from the bed. He tried to push himself up when Prabhupada came in, but he couldn't do it very much. And Prabhupada, motioned, no, be comfortable, be comfortable. And he couldn't even talk, So they put a chair with Prabhupada facing him. He was Babaji was lying on the bed, and Satsuru and the rest sat on the floor. And Prabhupada just started chanting japa, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, And Hanumatpresaka was listening. And Satsuru Maharaj says you could see that they were having a conversation. And the Prabhupada would start chanting a little bit different way. And then Hanumatpresaka would kind of start smiling and nodding his head. Then Prabhupada would nod his head back. And, so it was going on like this. They were communicating, very, very nicely. Okay. So they say that good sources, that Hanumatpresaka, 3 different times he had some nice darshan of Krishna, some ecstatic experience. And then he had an artist paint. He described the particular form he saw, like this, like that. Okay, So the name for his Istadevata was Radha Madhava, Radhamadava. That's the name he gave. So the next morning during Bhagavatam, for the first time, Prabhupada started chanting, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. And it's very famous because his voice broke and he went into an ecstatic, like moments like that and so on. So here we have a little maybe philosophical speculation that this particular prayer that Prabhupada adopted for us was remembering Hanumatpresaka Padar and his contribution like that. And of course, Prabhupada says, I never forget anybody's contribution like that to this movement and so on. So, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. You can sing it all day. Krishna's there, all the gopis. I'm not sure it's from Gitabali or Sharanagati, like that. Okay. So, any comments, questions? We're all, all on the same page here. Okay. Om Narayanam Namaskrityam. Narayanam Namaskrityam. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devam Sarasvatim Vyasam.
Devam Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Prabhuji, can you see our screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So, of course, we're continuing with our Bhaktivedanta studies, Mayapur Institute. And we're in the 9th canto, chapters 9.8 through 9.12, with, going through the dynasty of Maharaj Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku? I think it's Ikshvaku. Yeah. Just trying to advance here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay. And of course, we gave this little presentation that Srimad Bhagavatam is the heart of the Bhaktivedanta library. One time we were able to go to Madras and Shonaka Rishi's Oxford Center for Hindu Studies with Radhika and everybody else had organized a program with the University of Madras on the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. And they were surprised at how many contemporary scholars, wanted to participate. So I was able to go, and what I presented was Bhagavatam and the modern scientific perspective. And it was, people liked it. Some people not scientists. For example, one session was on the art traditions of the Bhagavatam, and so there are many illustrated Bhagavatams, and the Getty Library has 5 volumes of 25 of one edition. Somebody else has 1 volume. They all suggest that they all should be put together in one place, but nobody will accept that anybody any place but their own place. So there are a lot of Bhagavatams, very traditional, very historical, illustrated. It was just one section, very nice, and many of them have survived the ravages of the insects, the pandemics, the viruses, the microorganisms. And the reason is quite strange, but it's because of the green paint. Does anybody know why green paint would help pictures survive? You can go ahead and unmute your microphone there. I can't see the chat. Yeah. Okay, because it contains arsenic. Okay, so somehow or other, our friend arsenic, everything, mayatitam idam sarvam, has its utility. So arsenic protects Bhagavatam paintings. Another section was on the Catalogus Catalogorum, and it was a research project or a indexing project started, I'm not sure where, but it's I think most major research libraries have a copy of it, Catalogus Catalogorum. And it's like different, departments of Indology will host the work for maybe 3 years, another one for 1 year. And what it's doing is collecting, how you say this, it's a bibliography of all known ancient Sanskrit literature. Okay, and it may say like treatises on perfect squares, on yajna, on sacrifice, on Stala Puranas, in the Maharaja Mysore's library, in the University of London, and it lists where they are and some content like that. So when it was last produced, it contained over 140,000 known and ancient Sanskrit works cataloged. Varanasi University alone has over 100,000 uncatalogued, like that. So there's an immense resource, and Prabhupada wanted us to take advantage of this, an immense resource in Sanskrit literature, and very interesting, very useful, some of it. And so there's so much opportunity for scholars to develop our scholastic abilities in this area, to serve Krishna in this area of more being pundits. Okay. And of course, Srimad Bhagavatam is the heart. So in there, it's describing the Bhagavad Purana and the commentaries. Most of the Puranas do not have commentaries. They start here, they change to this topic, they'll go to something else, they come back to gym therapy, but Srimad Bhagavatam has, I think what it is, it has a 140 major commentaries. And of course, Prabhupada's will probably be included in that list. Over 140 major commentaries. And the next one after that is the Skanda Purana, it was all from memory, with 70 commentaries like that. Radhika Raman Das, our good associate, disciple there, was studying in Oxford. And they brought a Professor Narsingh Rao from University of Madras, actually. He passed on by then. Excuse me. And he was very distinguished, very emeritus professor of Sanskrit languages. So Oxford brought him, as they do, to teach maybe like 6 graduate students on the Bhagavad Purana for maybe about, I think it was 2 weeks. Then they had to write a paper. So Radhika said one day he called him to stay after. He said, Ravi, stay for a little bit. He said, I know you're ISKCON disciple, ISKCON, you're Prabhupada, studying Prabhupada. And he said, I just wanted to tell you that I've read all of the major Sanskrit literature and most of the minor literature. And he said, I said, I've been doing this for, for 60 years. He said, if I hadn't done that, it would be like a shame, And he said, I want to say that when it says that the Puranas are very beautiful, like stars in the sky, and very proud of themselves until the moon of Srimad Bhagavatam comes up. Oh, he's bigger than we are. And he said, it's not an exaggeration. He said, after studying all these things, I have to agree that for the beauty of the poetry, for the sophistication of the grammar, and for the depth of the philosophy, Srimad Bhagavatam is in a class by itself. So it's a little bit of a appreciation of what we have and what Srila Prabhupada has given us, a way to appreciate the Bhagavatam and begin to enter into it like that. So maybe anybody has any questions or comments? Otherwise, take notes, and at the end we can discuss things. Yeah. Okay. So we went to our structure. We went to 8th. Yesterday we were on the 8th chapter. And we're coming down now in the dynasty of the sun from Swayambhuva Manu, not from Swayambhuva Manu, from Vaivasvata Manu. And of course, this chapter is all about our Manu. The previous chapters are the 14 Manus, and then Swayambhuva Manu's descendants. So the Srimad Bhagavatam in that sense is very well organized. Again, the other Puranas are running here and there, but the Bhagavatam, it's very clear about its purpose. Ete cha angsa sakala pumsam Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. This is the Parijata, something, stotra. And Jiva Goswami describes it that way. Paribhasya. So it continues with this theme all the way through, very strict what it's trying to do. It's very well organized. And you can see there's a very well didactic organization. Maharaj Parikshit asked, tell me about the sons of the daughters of Manu and all the incarnations. Tell me about the other Manus. Tell me about our Manu. Tell me about within our Manu Krishna. and then finish off with the other manus after Krishna, and then the glories and the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he renounced his wife, he renounced his horse, he renounced his kingdom. He was no longer the best friend of anybody, but still he was conscious of his body, So therefore he had to become ecstatic, so he would no longer be conscious of his body. So now we're going through the dynasty of this universe. So this is a real fact, how this dynasty and universe exists, and it can give the names and what these people were doing, coming on down. So yesterday we came through, it's different people, okay. So today we're on chapter 9, the dynasty of Angshaman. This chapter describes the history of the dynasty of Angshaman up to Katvanga. And it also describes how Bhagirata brought the water of the Ganges to this earth. So we highlighted in this chapter for our remembrance the prayers by the Brahmana's wife to Shodash, who had been cursed by his guru, and Maharaj Katvanga, like that. Okay, so let's go down here and let's shift into down arrow. I'll take Control Tab. It should take me to somewhere here. Okay, where to go? There it is. Yeah. Okay. So Maharashtra, can you see our word file?
You want me to share that, Maharaj?
Oh, I should be sharing it.
Oh yeah, I'm able to see.
Okay. So any questions so far? Everything is okay? Should I go over anything or?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Maharaj, generally we hear that 18,000 slokas are there in Srimad Bhagavatam, but when we count it, we find it to be not 18,000, something around 14,000. So how do you understand?
This is one of the, 108, eternal questions. And people have tried so many ways. One person got 108 out, but then people look at how he did it. It was bizarre, So our great Oxford scholar, Radhika Raman, he says, Srimad Bhagavatam is traditionally set at 18,000 verses. Advaita Das, he's at Rutgers, I think. Brian something, we also have it. He has an article he wrote, the date and provenance, where it's coming from, of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's very nice. He goes through the historical stuff and establishing it, whatever else like that. And he points out that modern scholars say, the Vedic literature's evolved. They start off and over time, people added things and they got better and this and that. But he said the actual evidence is Madhva and everybody else, they're citing from scriptures that were larger, And so in that perspective, then it may very well have been at one point there were 18,000 verses. And of course, it might be rounded off, it might have been 18,271 or something. But that's all I know. As far as I know, many devotees trying to do this and nobody can really work it out. There are suggestions in terms of counting the prose things differently and so on. But that's all I know. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. So here we have Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Purana, 9th Canto, and we're doing the same thing. We're looking at the advanced view, cutting, pasting, editing a little bit, and we have a nice file for our own work. Theoretically, if you're a young man and a pundit, young lady, you can end up with your own nice collection of your own own word file. You can start putting in index notes, and you can start doing wonderful things like we were mentioning. Was somebody should do a whole book on the cosmology of the Bhagavatam, Sri Dharma in the Vedas, prayers in the Vedas, Sannyas Dharma. There's so many nice books we can extract out of Prabhupada's books that we need to extract out. For myself, if we had a very nice sannyas manual, all Prabhupada's comments, it would be so useful for my ashram. And ladies also probably going through a Sri Dharma, and then it will be, we could make such contribution to society. Before we were showing, reducing it down to 8-point and looking at just the purports, and you can see then how dense the chapter is. Another way to do it is to take the paper copy, which I have, and you can see here we have what do you call it? Um, point 0.92 pages per verse. You know, yeah. So that means that there's, you know, every verse gets about almost a page. So that's very dense. That's a lot of big purports in this one. I think we can cover it though. Okay. So again, this chapter describes the history of the dynasty of Amsuman, and of course, Amsuman is coming in the dynasty from Sagar, whose son was Asamjasa, and he was Angsaman. So he was a grandfather, and we're pointing out probably quite, you know, all lively people at that time, many generations living together. Up to Maras Katbanga, and it also describes how Bhagirata brought the water of the Ganges to the earth. Here is another wonderful thing: extracting all these summaries and putting them all into one Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, all these chapter summaries. Yeah. When it was smaller volumes, Prabhupada would pick one verse for each of the little volumes, you know, to head it up. But when like several volumes got merged into one big book, those smaller ones were lost. And that's also, you take those verses out that Prabhupada was choosing as the illustrated verse for that chapter. Yeah. A couple pictures here. There's Bhagirath. Actually, I think he was riding a chariot, wasn't walking, and Ganga was flowing behind him. She's, of course, a very powerful personality. And then there's some yogi taking advantage of, I guess, in Rishikesh. Okay. So we, what I call it, chapter summary, we kind of highlighted who was the son of who. The son of Angsuman was Dilip, who tried to bring the Ganges into this world, but died without success. Bhagirath was the son of Dilip, and it describes how Mother Ganges said was pleased by his austerities and his prayers, and she could hook up with him because he was approaching her with love, so she could reciprocate. From love comes knowledge. But she gave two conditions. So, who knows those two conditions? Somebody from South Africa. Anybody from South Africa here? What are the two conditions she asked for? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, Anant Gaur, what are the two conditions?
Somebody should be able to control the force with which he is coming down. Otherwise, he'll directly go to Patal Loka and go beyond. And second one was that when sinful people come and take bath in her, then she also has to get purified. So how to do that?
Okay, very nice. Yeah. Someplace else I'm reading that she was getting a little proud, you know, as sometimes we all do. And she was thinking nobody can control the force of my emotions and this thing like that. So she fell into Lord Shiva's hair, and Lord Shiva captured her in his hair, and she couldn't get out. So then she became humble and apologized and said, Prabhu, whatever. So he started crying, and Lord Shiva was forced to release her then. Okay. So we see in Lord Shiva's head, there's the Ganges water coming out. So at the end of this session, I'm going to have a question for everybody. Why is there a moon on Lord Shiva's head? Okay. Then Bhagirath performed austerities to satisfy Shiva, and he agreed. It's called Asutosh. Okay. So his ancestors were delivered, their ashes, and they went to heaven. These guys didn't even get to go to Vaikuntha. I guess they're pretty arrogant, carried away by their opulence. Prabhupada says that Ravana's problem was he had more opulences than he could peacefully enjoy. So it happens so many times. Maharaj is in sannyasa ashram, people keep bringing, so many people want to cook for you. This is one of the fundamental facts of sannyasa ashram, is that usually you don't die of starvation and neglect. You die of, unbelievable, and Prabhupada too, Bhaktisiddhanta. Yeah. So having more benedictions than we can peacefully enjoy. Achahara prayasascha. That's a problem. How to deal with those? Murari was trying to deal with this. Okay. So they were too opulent, the sons of Maharaj Sagar with their power and their influence, and it covered them, made them very, very easy targets for Indra to blind them. Yeah. Okay, the son of Mahia Bhagarat was Shruti. Naba was the son of Shruta. Sindhudvipa was the son of Naba. Ayutthaya was the son of Sindhudvipa. Rituparna was a friend of Nala. Okay, yeah. And he taught Nala how to gamble and learned from Nala Ashva Vidya, or horse knowledge, how to control horses. Uh, and I'm remembering, maybe here's a question at the end somebody can answer, that Yudhishthira actually learned, did he learn from Rituparna or Nala the art of gambling? Because we know he wasn't very good at it. He couldn't control himself. He liked it so much, but he wasn't very good at it, which is interesting because he's the son of Dharma. Okay. So anyway, the son of Rituparna was Sarvakama. His son was Sudasa, became Saudasa. And there's a whole story about how he was, and his wife was Madhyanti. And he was, of course, cursed by, I think by Vashishta, no? By his spiritual master, because Vashishta thought he fed him meat or something, you know. And then when he was relieved from the curse by Valmiki, but he was also cursed. He couldn't have children because the wife of Shodasha had cursed him like that. So then I think it was Vashishta or something gave children to him through his wife, Damayanti. And these things are going on. Okay. But finally, Ashmak was born. So we had one aspirant, Mukunda Dutt. Maybe you know him. He's a very, very wonderful kirtan singer. He was associating with Tamal Krishna Maharaj in Houston, Dallas. So then Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him, he said, maybe you can study Sanskrit because I need some help with that. So Mukunda Dutt investigated. The U.S. government at that time, because of Vietnam War and all these things, was giving very, very good grants for people who wanted to learn Asian languages. Because they thought we can use these people, in the government service. So he got a grant, and he was studying at the University of Washington, studied Sanskrit. And then one devotee in Los Angeles, Bhakti Eric, wanted to take initiation from him. But he said, I'm not initiating. It's a good move in many ways. But okay, Hanumatpresaka Swami, I like the way his attitude. Okay. So then Eric approached me. I said, okay, I'm very much if you're being recommended by Mukunda Dutt. He's such a nice devotee. So then we all met in Vrindavan, and I was there. We were working on one of our books, and my friend Professor Samaresh Bandyopadhyaya from the University of Calcutta was there with his friend, one brahmachari fellow, older fellow, nice fellow, and they're scholars, like that. They like Prabhupada. So then Ekashma showed up at the door to the guest house, and Mukunda Dutt was also there. We were all going to go to one Brahmana's house and give initiations. And so I was trying to find a name. So if you ever initiate anybody, trying to find names that start with an E is a terrible task. You'll probably find 25,000 Eka Chakra Gram Dasas in ISKCON. So I couldn't think of one. And then this brahmachari fellow, he said, Ekashma. It's a good name. What does that mean? He says it means Shalagram Shila, I looked at Dr. Samaresh and he nodded, yes. So I guess what it comes from is that Eka Ashma, that the Shalagram Shila or Govardhan Shilas, they're the number one stones, So we met outside the guest house, and then I introduced Mukunda Dutt to Professor Bandyopadhyaya, and I was feeling a little bit ashamed. I'm initiating in front of this guy who's a PhD in Sanskrit, Mukunda Dutt. And then he was kind of nodding at me, and then I said, Mukunda Dutt took his doctorate at University of Washington. And Dr. Samaresh said, one of my students was there, Harold Rosher. And Mukunda Dutt lighted up and he said, oh my goodness, he was my teacher. He said, oh my goodness, you're my Param Guru in Sanskrit. So my reputability increased, and I pulled my shoulders back a little bit. So he went off for the initiations at the devotee's house from Brahmana. Then I gave the name Ekashma, and Eric just, was like shocked. What is that? Oh my God. Shocked. Of course, this is Vrindavan Dham and everything is unusual. And he said when they were coming to India with the party, where three of them, two older devotees, ISKCON devotees, Brahmanas, there was one lady in the airport, one lady devotee, and she had this big, heavy carry-on bag, And he asked her, Mataji, can I carry that for you? And she said, yes, you can, thank you for your service. And so when he was carrying it, he asked her, why is this so heavy? What's in it? And she said, oh, it's full of Shalagram Shilas. So just a few hours before, days before, he'd been doing service to Shalagram Shila, and here he had become named Ekashmadas. Okay, so we should be able to remember the name Ashmak from now on, that it means a stone. But why is he called stone? The son of Ashmak is known as Balaka. Okay, he was protected from the curse of Parasuram by being surrounded by women. Okay, therefore he's also called Nari Kavacha. Yeah. And he will become he'll become the father, the next generation of all the Kshatriyas. I thought Ashvatthama had that honor too. I don't know. Okay. Maybe it's a different cycle. Therefore, he's also called Mulaka, Mula meaning the root. From Balaka was Dasarat, but I think this is a different Dasarat. Okay, then from him came Davidi, Vishvasaha, and Katvanga. Okay. And he could only, so he got, long story about Kumara's Katvanga. Okay. And this will come down, I think, then to the Dasarat, who's the father of Ram, I guess. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So verses 1 through 5. And Sukadeva Goswami says, Maharaj Ambarish, Amsuman did austerities, he died. Okay. And like him, his son Dilip also became a victim of death. Yeah. Bhagirati, his son, performed severe austerities to bring the Ganges to this material world. One time Prabhupada says, getting up early in the morning, chanting 16 rounds, following 4 principles, that is severe austerity. Yes, severe austerity. And if little brahmacharis do this, they will be able to experience the unlimited pleasure available on the spiritual platform. And then with the inner grihastha ashram, they'll do it with that perspective. Okay. So we're also doing severe austerities. Yeah. Mother Ganges said, I will satisfy your austerities, give you a benediction. Okay. But there's two requirements. Okay. Yeah. Who will accept that force? You know? With all these sinful reactions will accumulate on me. Okay. So of course, Prabhupada talks about this many times, that people go to these places and they perform austerities and they take away the sinful reactions like that. Okay. So then Prabhupada, of course, in the purport, very appropriately, we're talking about taking away sinful actions. He quotes, let's all chant together with our microphones closed, except for me, with our eyes closed. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami masuchaha. So what is Arjuna's problem? Yeah, without a problem, there's no Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is repeated again and again. It's 5 times in the first 2 cantos being presented. The Bhagavatam starts off, somebody has a problem. The sages of Naimisharanya had a problem. Okay, the only result of their fire sacrifices was their bodies were turning black from the smoke. So give us some solution. What is the best dharma? What is the best scripture? What is the purpose of all these different incarnations? We can see Krishna through them. What is the purpose of the incarnation of Rama and Krishna? And now that they've gone, where has religion and austerity taken shelter? Okay, so the problems. Arjuna's problem is afraid he's going to suffer sinful reactions. He's going to dwell perpetually in hell because he's going to leave all these women unprotected. They're going to become confused by men with big shoulders, big mustaches, and big automobiles, and everything will go to hell. And he was pretty much correct. So Krishna goes through the entire Bhagavad Gita, and he finally comes back and he says, he gives his Shruti fall. if you do surrender unto me, as I've been describing in so many fashions and so many perspectives, so it covers all of your different, ideas about reality, then hey, don't worry. You'll be free from all sinful reactions. You'll be free from all sinful reactions like that. So this verse, of course, is very, very central. It's the beginning and the end of Arjuna's whole, concern. Okay. Then, in the purport, we highlighted this: no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to neutralize the reactions of sinful deeds. Sometimes, it's very specific, the spiritual master, after accepting a disciple, and Prabhupada says, anybody makes karma. If you're marrying people, if you're giving advice, so many times in different degrees, we're accepting responsibility by doing these things. Sometimes the spiritual master, after accepting a disciple, must take charge of that disciple's past sinful activities, and being overloaded must sometimes suffer, if not fully, then partially, for the sinful acts of the disciple. Every disciple, therefore, must be very careful not to commit sinful activities after initiation. So before initiation, Shenvatam, Swakata Krishna, Punya, Shravana, Kirtanaha, Hridiyantasto Hiyabadrani, Vidunoti Suhritsatam. These activities are in and of themselves pious activities. How many kinds of pious activities? 3 kinds. Yes, sir. We're here with our associates, Tom Brown and Buck White. Thank you, Tom Brown. It's okay. All right, thank you. Pious activities to go to heaven or get good results in this life. Pious activities for liberation, and pious activities to advance in devotional service. Punya Punja. Punya Punja Kriti. The cowherd boys, after acquiring Punja, mountains of pious activities, were able to play with Krishna. Play with him. Of course, little boys and girls. Little girls have their dolls and arrange little doll marriages. I've seen this. Little boys have their soldiers and arrange little wars. So it's interesting. Yeah. But it's such intense activities. So the samadhi is so natural, so intense, playing like that. You don't even want to eat. So these pious hearing and chanting, many, many stories we could go into here. I have one very interesting story about somebody going through this from becoming an alcoholic to becoming a devotee. So in the beginning, Prabhupada engages the disciples for after 6 months. There's Harinam Diksha, which Prabhupada says is more or less experimental. Okay. Then he goes on, he said the actual initiation, the real initiation, okay, second initiation. But he comments that Jiva Goswami says that in Kali Yuga, Harinam Diksha is sufficient if we follow it. We don't have to formally take second initiation, but we have to follow first initiation standards strictly. Okay. So then at that time, is formally accepted as a disciple in this sense, really initiated, actually initiated, spiritually initiated. This is all in Upadeshamrita, text number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, text 5. If you read it, you'll see this is probably making this distinction. So after 1 year of examining each other, and that's recommended 1 year before second initiation. GBC changed that, but I think it was a mistake. So 1 year after before second initiation, after people becoming purified. So by first initiation, it means they're free from eating gross things and engaging in gross relations. And so probably give the example of unplugging the fan. So when the spiritual master gives Harinam Diksha, already for 6 months living in the temple, Prabhupada said that was okay many times, they're purified enough that Prabhupada, being a great, powerful acharya, could take all these reactions like that. Hansaduta, other people associating with them intimately, Hansaduta said that was his fall down. It wasn't Bhoktaram Yagnatapashyam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. It was Sutradam Sarvadehinam. He thought, I can save all these people. I can be their best friend. Prabhupada took care of so many strange people. I'll imitate Prabhupada. And he said that was the problem, So he couldn't handle the simple reactions from these people. So Prabhupada also requiring that 6 months before initiation. Then there was Harinam Diksha, which is in the Gaudiya Math. It's was even more loose than Prabhupada's standard in the Gaudiya Math. Yeah. But then some Gaudiya Math. But then in the for real initiation, okay, at that point, Diksha Kali Bhakti Kari Atma Samarpan Ye Kali Krishna Kari Tari Atma Sam. All these verses I'm quoting are pretty much from Upadeshamrita. That's my refresh them. At the time of Diksha, when the disciple fully surrenders unto Krishna, Krishna accepts him as good as himself. So we become Brahman, we become spiritual. Our karma is taken over by Radha. Durga passes the strings to Radha. And now what's happening is for our spiritual advancement, for serving Krishna. And our karma is still there, but now it's, Krishna karma. Okay. I've had personal experiences of this, going to Indians' houses for programs and coming back, and so many times cutting my feet after eating in their houses. Not all of them, but some of them. And that's probably says a real example of taking karma is having your feet cut. I initiated some devotees in Spain. It was a little irregular. It was within the range of GBC and everybody else, and devotees agreed. But I came back to the Miami temple, opened the door, and cut my toe, like swap, just cut it. Good cut, Almost had to have a stitch in it, And it was just, So my experience is, if you're going to take up the position of being an ISKCON Diksha Guru, it's a whole discussion, then you're going to take karma. And Prabhupada doesn't have to take it. He's gone. Somebody doing it for him. So take notes. Maybe at the end here, we'll have some discussions about some of these things. If you want to discuss these topics about initiation. Text number 6, Bhagavata said, those who are saintly because of devotional service and are therefore in renounced order of life. So being a saintly person by devotional service should bring you to the renounced order of life. Everybody, children, men, women, everybody has to become a Goswami. As a formality, only men do it and follow the formalities. Prabhupada says there's no difference between the grihasta fully engaged in devotional service and the man in the renounced order of life. But because of formal austerities, that sannyasi is given more formal respect. Okay. Those who are saintly because of devotional service are therefore in the renounced order of life. They are free from material desires. Okay, at least you're following the 4 principles like that. And then, of course, Prabhupada gives finer and finer details gradually of what this means and so on. Okay, who are pure devotees. Prabhupada says there are first, second, and third class pure devotees. Then he says, well, actually, the third class pure devotees are not pure devotees. Madhyamadikari is a pure devotee by using his intelligence, or her intelligence. Uttamadikari is just spontaneous. Okay, expert in following the regulative principles mentioned in the Vedas are always glorious and pure in behavior and are able to deliver fallen souls. So he's saying these people will be able to take the simple reactions from you. Don't worry. Okay. Then Prabhupada goes down and glorifying the Ganga. Okay, yeah. But glorifying the devotees who are even advanced, who are devotees and saintly persons advanced in the renounced order of life. Okay. Prabhupada would give sannyas 6 years after following brahmacharya life. Okay. And I think you can stop carrying your danda after another 6 years. I experienced Bahudak, Kurichak Bahudak, Parirajak, maybe coming to Hong Kong. But I actually experienced them, how it was just a natural thing in my life when I took sannyas. Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani Svata Stena Garbhabrita. Bhagavatam 1:13-10. Okay, who's speaking here? Who knows the first canto that well? Who's speaking to who? Somebody who has. Yes, who's he speaking to?
Yudhishthira to Vidura.
Yeah, to Vidura. He's come back. Yeah, yes, such a nice verse. Tirta Korpanti Tirtani. So nice, touches the heart. Okay, people like you are yourselves places of pilgrimage. Then Prabhupada says, if one forgets to show respect in this way, one must observe a fast for that day. Okay. So this is have these things in your index, Sometimes you're arguing with, bhaktas, and they won't pay their obeisances, sannyasis. But Upadeshamrita says if you should quote from the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita the same way, speech which is pleasing, be able to quote. I directly seen this when I was a temple president. One nice guy, but he just would not, follow my instructions. I was talking about why you should do it. And then I remember this thing. Okay, if you quote from the scriptures, quote from the Acharyas. So I thought about something Prabhupada said. He immediately surrendered. So where is this? This is talking about the Ganges, talking about saintly people. You can locate it from the context, build the context. So first time we see a person in the renounced order of life, we should pay our obeisances. Otherwise, we should fast. Again, how does this look from the sannyas point of view? In Mayapur, it's a real problem. Walking around Mayapur, you feel like a complete fool. And everybody's paying their obeisances to you, and you're trying to act saintly and look like, some saintly kind of person. And, I try to reciprocate with everybody, and it's, oh my goodness, don't take sannyas. Okay. There are many methods of prayaschita, kechit kevala kevalya. Okay. Here's the story of Ajamil, which is being cited right in Nectar of Instruction number 1 in our basic book. What's it called? It's Vacho Vegam Manasa Krodha Vegam. Jiva Rupa Goswami is dealing with this within the beginning of Nectar of Devotion too, exactly the same way. So we see Nectar of Instruction is a little brother of Nectar of Devotion. Summary. And they're quoting the same verses that everybody's being vegam, pushed to go to hell in the 5th canto. So beginning of the 6th canto, Sukadeva Goswami is presenting an option. Maharaj Parikshit says, how can they be saved? They should do pious activities. And then Maharaj Parikshit rejects his guru, probably in a very polite sense, but he says, no, not going to work. And Guru says, aha, I was testing you. So you should be engaged in Jnana Yoga, do pious activities, austerity, study the Vedas. Then Maharaj Parikshit maybe doesn't say anything, but he kind of like frowns and nods his head, and Sukadeva Goswami frowns and nods his head back at him and says, yes, not by karma, not by jnana, only by bhakti, yeah. And so we see these verses quoted in the purport. Nectar of Instruction, Ki Jai. Okay, moving ahead here. Okay. So then check text number 7. I think he's talking about how Lord Shiva is actually so Shiva is the functional material incarnation of Krishna. I mentioned that before somewhere. Yeah. When Krishna wants to deal with the material world, when you want to play with the kitty cat, you take a piece of yarn. So he becomes Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva can deal with all these people. So he's so powerful that he'll be able to maintain your waves. Kshiram yata dadi vikari vishesha yogat. So, maybe we'll a little more here. So, in Adi Lila, chapter 7, which Lord Chaitanya printed as a separate book, Lord Chaitanya Prabhupada printed as a separate book before he printed Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 7. Lord Chaitanya in 5 features. Prabhupada quotes one of the 2 songs, which is only 2 songs are quoted in all of Prabhupada's books, and that's in there. But also at the end of the chapters, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, it describes how he was in Varanasi, and he was visiting Kashi Vishwanath, Lord Shiva, every day, and thousands of people following. And also when Lord Chaitanya was traveling in South India, it says the same thing. It says that he was visiting temples of the gods and goddesses, coming and going left and right, So Prabhupada says, following the example of Lord Chaitanya, we should also visit the temples of demigods and show people how to respect them properly, and also save them from being disturbed so much, by all these materialistic followers. There's another whole topic there about this demigod worship, our experiences. So near the end, where it says the Lord Chaitanya was visiting Kashi Vishwanath in the purport, Prabhupada talks like this. He was a Vaishnava, but he was visiting Lord Shiva. And Prabhupada says devotees can also worship Lord Shiva on the basis of the following prayers. worship the demigods on the basis of the following prayers. And then he gives prayers for Durga, Ganesh, Shiva, I think Panchopashana, and Surya. And these are the prayers from the Brahma Samhita. So these prayers are very nice to chant. And close our eyes now. Kshiram yata dadivikara visesha yogat sanjayate nahi pratagasta hetoho yat sambutam apitatad samupaiti takaryat govindam haripurusham tamaham bhajami. So we can present, we can chant these when we see Lord Shiva. We can offer these prayers, and it's totally bona fide, and Lord Shiva would be very pleased. And of course, there's so much to offer to people, explaining about Lord Shiva from the Bhagavatam. Okay, Prabhupada says, Lord Shiva is Vishnu in an incarnation for the mode of ignorance. The material world exists predominantly in the mode of ignorance. Aha. Okay. I heard one time it said predominantly in the mode of passion. Yeah. I guess the number of living entities are mostly fully in the bodily concept of life. You can be in the bodily concept of life, or you can be in the sense object concept of life, even worse. Absorbed into the sense objects, coming out of that, come to your senses. Absorbed in your senses, come out of that. Buddha says, watch your mind. Come out of that. Lord Chaitanya says, watch your intellect. Come out of that. Vyasasdev says, watch Mahavishnu. Therefore, Lord Shiva is compared here to the longitude and latitude of the entire material universe, which resembles a cloth woven of threads extending for both its length and breadth. And of course, we've discussed this point about being the functional material incarnation and playing with the kitty cat. After saying this, Bhakti-Ras satisfied Lord Shiva by performing austerities. Okay, Prabhupada said the word Ashva Atushyata indicates that Lord Shiva is very quickly satisfied. So we see a nice etymology of Lord Shiva's name. Really rigorous, we can put it into our dictionary, our index. Okay, yeah. So most people worship Lord Shiva and Durga, and they do not actually want spiritual happiness. They do not actually want spiritual happiness, for it is almost unknown to them. If you have a human body, Upadeshamrita, you have a little bit of God consciousness. It's almost impossible. You may see it as it has to be somebody behind all this, or something, feeling some hint, yeah. But spiritual happiness is almost unknown to them. And again, 1866 being quoted. Okay. So then Bhagirata approached Lord Shiva. She came down. We've already mentioned this, asking this question, why is the Ganges coming out of Lord Shiva's head? Well, because she was proud. He caught her. And she was proud again. And then the sage Janu took her into his mouth, I think, and swallowed her up. So she was having a bad day. And then she cried again or something, made reasonable explanations, and came out of his ear. Okay. Yeah. Gangamayi ki jai. Yeah. Lord Balaram will be your guru if you're reasonable. Radharani will be your guru no matter what. This is the difference between uncle's love and mother's love. Yeah. Mother is unconditionally loving, and uncle will only love you if you're going to be a reasonable guy and take you to your father. Yeah. Okay, he had a very swift chariot. We can discuss that, of course. This is all on the subtle level. Okay, yeah. And they all became eligible. All of his granduncles. This is way back there. His great uncles or something all became eligible for the heavenly planets. And again, they didn't become eligible, go to Vaikuntha. Okay. And the purport then Prabhupada makes this point that the Ganges is being worshipped by the water of the Ganges. All we have to offer to Krishna is what Krishna has given us, and we offer it back to him. But we are part and parcel of him, but we have this independence, this nature, this creative ability, this intelligence, so we can come up with things that Krishna could not imagine. And we're always expanding our abilities, our service eternally. Okay. Okay. Then Prabhupada still glorifying the Ganges. The appearance of Ganga Devi, we can talk about these sections. You can read these sections. Simply by bathing in her water keeps very good health. Anyone who bathes in the water of the Ganges regularly keeps very good health and gradually becomes a devotee of the Lord. Bathing in the Ganges recommended in all scriptures. I was trying to find like some scientific basis for the claims of the Ganges as antiseptic, like that. And not too long ago, there was what I forgot where it was. What's the university? IIT. It's not there. I forget which one it was. They did a whole study on the microbiology, and they found all kinds of very, very unusual phagocytes in the Ganges, which don't exist anyplace else. There's a very scientific laboratory, everything else. Kanpur, IIT Kanpur. And then they were describing how these would eat up all kinds of stuff and everything else. So then where are they? Where are they coming from? So on. And then also, apparently, when the sailors would go back from India, they would take water from the Ganges because it wouldn't putrefy. So there are even scientific investigation that the Ganges is very antiseptic. Yeah. And many people have this direct experience, like Prabhupada was saying. Gangara parasa hoile. How's it going? Sorry. Gangara parasa hoile. Pastate pavan. Simply by seeing a devotee like Prabhupada, one gets the benefit immediately, but one has to bathe in the Ganges, for Prabhupada says, gradually become purified. Yeah. Okay. By worshiping Mother Ganga, one becomes a devotee, and the devotees are, okay, then he's describing in this verse. So there's a reason why the verses follow one after another. Okay. Okay. So we can stop there because now the Ganges has been brought into the world. We're hearing it, we're reinforcing it, we're glorifying it, we're amplifying it on the subtle platform. So any comments or questions at this point? Anybody been taking any notes? Yeah.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna. I have a question. Please forgive my ignorance.
My God, Jalangi Devi Dasi. This is Gangamai.
I stay in Mayapur because during your class you mentioned that we have to pay obeisances to sannyasis, otherwise we have to fast for that day. Then actually I am always confused about how we should treat those Gaudiya Math sannyasis. We met them on the road, and then their attitude is like they pretend they didn't see us, or sometimes even they turn their back to us. And then I always confuse. Should I pay obeisances to them or fasting? Thank you, Maharaj.
All the animals in Navadvip also are incredible. It's it's the Dham. It's so wonderful. I've many interesting animal stories from Navadvip. Oh my goodness, yeah. So whatever happens there is full of bliss. One purport Prabhupada says, I think it's a purport, not a lecture. He says we can pay our obeisances to a Mayavadi sannyasi. Of course, they have to be sannyasis. Okay, even the dress, we can offer a little respect. You can fold your hands to your head and offer it that way, or if you wish to do, so many, not dandavats, but other things, okay. But even, folding the hands and touching to the head is offering respect. Prabhupada says obeisances. But Prabhupada says we can offer obeisances even to Mayavadi sannyasis because of the austerities. So Prabhupada says if we don't offer obeisances to people because of their beauty, their wealth, their power, all these kind of things, Krishna will not be pleased with us because he has given those things, but we respect them within proportion. And so you see a sannyasi, a Gaudiya Math sannyasi coming down. Okay, we're not, many times we're quite, we can work. Some Gaudiya Maths, I know one particularly where we had some conflict about different philosophical points. But now, Bhakti Srimad was telling me, he said, now they've come around and they're accepting Prabhupada's points. He says, we're not working together, but now we're all running in the same direction in the preaching. Okay. So especially Gaudiya Math sannyasis and other sannyasis, if they're not like, if they're cheaters, okay, then you don't give them respect to give people an example to people. But if they're sannyasis, okay, you can offer respects. And then Of course, in their sampradaya and their organization, their perspective, they may have stronger separation between the sexes like that, you know. And so for them, it may be some disturbance or something that if a lady is offering respects and you're not acting like Chaitanya Lila, where you're offering your respects from, 500 feet away or something like that, so on, that's all very cultural and like that and so on. So I would say at least if you, fold your hands and touch them to your head like that, then that, okay, that may fit within their perspective of how to follow their ashram and so on, So does that help? Yeah.
Yes, great help. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Where are you from?
Originally, I am from China, but now I stay in Mayapur.
China, a very big place. Are you from the south?
I'm from Beijing.
You know Jackie Chan?
Yes, but I from Hong Kong movie star.
Okay. Yes. Secret kung fu from the south. Yeah. In my last lifetime, I was a Chinese monk. That's why I took birth on Guam. The stork showed up with a Chinese baby, and there was a white woman, and he said, "Well, this is not my problem. This is your problem." So ever since I've been a little boy, I love Sun Wukong, monkey, Journey to the West. Yes, yeah, this was a wonderful story. Okay, yes, devotee.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, I have one doubt. This in the
I have a lot of doubts.
Text number 6, that Bhagirath is saying that to Ganga Devi, that you will be purified by the saintly persons, the devotees of the Lord. He on what basis he is saying? He is giving a boon, or how he says Ganga? He is under Ganga Devi. He is asking help for Ganga, and he is giving a boon, like you will be purified by taking bath. The devotees will take bath, and you will be purified.
Okay. Of course, in the purport coming down parampara, like we're mentioning, Prabhupada justifies this by quoting from the Bhagavatam, 113:10, Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani. So
Yes,
in the Bhagavad Purana, there's already mention of this. And if we were able to consult Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati without being burned to ashes by his glance, he probably could point out different, places in the Vedas where the potency of great assembly people are also recommended like that. So that's, I don't know where Bhagirata Maharaj got it from. This is maybe Satya Yuga and everything else, but probably within the different, Samhitas and the Vedas, there's also glories of devotees being mentioned. Yeah.
If he is quoting from the Shastras, of course Ganga Devi also knew about it. Should be.
Boy, one time it was what's his name? Makanlal was he actually he left his body recently. A good friend there, I forgot what his sannyas name was. But I think he said he asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, do the demigods know that Krishna is God? And he said, Prabhupada looked at him and said, they are like you. They are knowing, but they are not always liking. Like that. So they get caught up in their vanity. Like we're saying in this Leela, at least Ganga Devi, at least twice when she was coming down, was just, proud of her emotions and her beauty and her sentiment and her power, and her influence over men. And so, okay, so she was, maybe this is higher Leela. Demigods are taking lessons on a higher level. So they know these things, they forget these things, they go to Brahma to approach Vishnu because they can't do it, And so in this perspective, she may have even been testing him, testing her son. And he already knew the answer like that and so on. So that's all I can add,
And Bhagirath also is saying that Shiva will sustain you. Without taking permission from Shiva, he gave permission to Ganga Devi. Later, he is approaching to Shiva.
Yeah, maybe he put some. Was your father a lawyer by any chance? Yeah. So he may have he may have indicated, maybe these are suggestions. He's suggesting this is how it's going to happen, and she agreed to this, and then he went ahead and took care of everything. Maybe he had a big mela to invite all the saintly people to come to the back, yank of the back. Maybe he started Mag melas or something, also. So, it may have been in that sense. He's just making it as a suggestion, and then she agrees, and he works out the details afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, Maharaj.
Yeah. My goodness. Thank you. Any more final questions on this section? Anybody want to understand about Bhagiraj's chariot?
Maharaj, can I ask a question?
Certainly. Yeah.
It's not on this section, but it's a general question on Bhagavatam. Is it all right?
Okay. Yeah, certainly. We discussed it in general in the beginning.
Okay, so in second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Mahamuni krite kimva paririshvara. If this Mahamuni Vyasadev, he has compiled this Bhagavatam and there is no other need of any other literature. So if Vyasadev himself has written this Bhagavatam, how can he glorify himself? He's writing.
This is an easy one. Like that. Who is Steve Guarino in ISKCON?
Steve Guarino. Don't know.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Who wrote the Lilamrita? Who was the editor? Who compiled it?
Satswarup Maharaj.
So in there he says, Bhakta Steve came to the temple, Bhakta Steve did this, Bhakta Steve did that, and Bhakta Steve took initiation as?
Satswarup Das Goswami.
Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah. So he's writing it as the editor and that kind of stuff, but then he's talking about it, and that's one explanation. It's a logical explanation like that, Maybe Ganesh squeezed that in when Vyasadeva wasn't watching or something, But at least logically, we see many times that the author, and many times when someone's writing a history, then he's in it. He'll mention it. He won't say I did this, I did that. He'll talk about it in that impersonal sense.
He's taking the title Mahamuni himself.
He's giving it to himself. He's awarding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
These things are going on. What to speak of ISKCON? Okay. So, I guess maybe it's 5:45 a.m. here. The sun hasn't come yet. Let's take a little break until what do we give ourselves, a 10-minute break? Okay. So 5 minutes to the hour or to the half hour, depending where you are. Let's come back again. Maybe we can finish this chapter. Thank you so much for your association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes?
Actually, I was raising my hand to just ask a question. So
when we come back, when you come back, you can ask it?
Yeah, I'll ask. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I just
you,
want to
son.
take your permission. Thank you very much.
Sun God, Ravi.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Rabiji, Gopal, you had a question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much. Maharaj, my question is actually now about Lord Shiva. They have been telling about Shambhu and also Sadashiva, Rudra. There are many names are there. and of course, the annihilation is the major important role of Shiva in the form of Rudra. But actually, how to understand how he has been, what is the origin, which is the origin basically from which other forms have come? Because there are Dvadasa Rudras are there, which is explained in the Bhagavatam, and also about Sadasiva when we are talking about he looks at Shambhu, and also then the incarnation starts actually in the Prakriti.
So I couldn't catch exactly what is your question.
So what is the basic origin of Shiva actually?
Okay. From what I understand, having read everything, there is the spiritual world, and Mahavishnu is eternal. Okay.
Yeah.
The pradhan, material energy, is eternal. It's there, but it's like a cloth. It's just sitting there, non-manifest. Then when Mahavishnu expands himself, like an arm and like a hand coming out of the body, and enters into the cloth, then you can make different puppet forms. Like we got our thing here. Okay, here we got pradhan. Okay. Let me see if I can get my picture here. Okay, yeah, we got pradhan. Okay, yeah. Then we get Mahavishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Shiradakshay Vishnu. We got hello, Hare Krishna. Okay, woohoo, yeah. So then it becomes Prakriti. And so another way of looking at it, there is no one cannot become liberated just by worshiping Shiradakshay Vishnu or Garbhadakshay Vishnu. Only when you know all three Vishnus, because there's no rasa with the Paramatma. Devotees, this is difficult because we see the Paramatma as being Krishna, his hand. Okay, yeah. But other people, it's just intuition, insight, and these kind of things, That's impersonal to a large degree. Probably even says impersonal Vishnu, the Trimurti. So another way to look at it is that they only exist when there's a mirror. The reflection in the mirror only exists when there's a mirror. So when the pradhan has not expanded as Prakriti, there's no Paramatma, there's no Shiradakshay Vishnu or Garbhadakshay Vishnu. So I understand Lord Shiva is the same way. There's no origin of Lord Shiva. He's always in Vaikuntha as Sadashiva, always there. But when the material world is there, then he steps into the mirror and he starts to do things, like that, and then the living entities, and he goes into the mirror when it's fully distorted in the mode of ignorance, and he manifests himself as Kali and Bhairav. So that's my understanding. He's like the Paramatma in many ways. He's reflected in the material nature. He incarnates in the material nature. So his origin is dependent upon the pastimes that Krishna wants to perform and the functions he has to do. So does that help?
Yes, very much, Maharaj. A small extension. Maharaj, actually, it's mentioned Mahesh Dham is also actually permanent because in the Brahma Samhita also it's mentioned actually Haridhama Shate Seshtu, and it's also mentioned because Mahesh Dhama is there, Durga Dhama, after that Mahesh Dhama is there. But that's also temporary, or how do we understand?
Kapila says to Devahudi that internally I'm the Paramatma, externally I'm the time factor. So when we say temporary, it's a big concept. Big concept. It's a big concept. And so Vaitacharya is sometimes described as Mahavishnu, sometimes he's described as Shiva, sometimes he's described as the Paramatma. So, they're all kind of taking on the same positions, the same functions like that. And if we want to distinguish them, I think we have to kind of like go there. So as far as I understand, yes, Sadashiva is eternal. He exists in Vaikuntha with his pastimes, activities, and maybe again it's like at the lower edge of Vaikuntha, like we're talking about Mahesh Dham, but it's above the river Vairaj, the Karana ocean, and always there. So if you worship Lord Shiva, you can go to him eternally, and worship is just like the worship of Lakshmi and Narayan, pretty much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Okay, let's sing a song together, you and me. Okay, everybody else can join. You'll be the chief guest, and everybody else can sing with their microphones closed, otherwise overloaded. So the first citation in Upadeshamrita is, what is it there? It's like, I forgot what it is. Yeah. Anyway, it's from this song. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur has sung Gauranga. I forgot what the line is here, what it is exactly now. Only when I become eager to understand the literature left with the six Goswamis will I be able to understand Radha and Krishna. Yeah. Rupa Raghunatha Pade. Yeah. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti. So you have to include the music. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti Kamihama Bujabo Se Yugala Piriti. So in our spirit of Bhakti Vaibhava, we're following all these citations. And this will take you, of course, to the song Goranga Bolite Habe, Pulaka Sharir. Okay, it's a citation. But no, you look at it, it's the first song in Prarthana, the very first song, like the invocation, the summary, and it seems to summarize all the content of our whole philosophy, everything else. Okay, and it's one of two songs, maybe three, that Prabhupada cites in all of his books, complete. And all the purports, only this song, Goranga Bolite Habe. And the other one is, what is the other song that Prabhupada quotes completely? Anybody know? It's in the story of Narada Muni and Daksha. Narada Muni Bhajai Vina. And I've heard Prabhupada said that was his favorite song. So it's the only two songs anybody be able to find. Maybe Saira Abhijadal, but that's only part of it. So where is it? It's in Adi Lila, which is number 1, chapter 7, which is number 7. So it's 1:17. Maybe memorize that. So you can open the book. So everybody can open the book to this page, and there it is. Okay. So I'll sing, and Ravi Gopal, you respond. Goranga bolite habe pulaka sharir hari hari balite na yane babenir. Bolie.
Gauranga bolite habe pulaka sharira Hari Hari bolite nayane bhabenira
Araka beneptai chawanda karuna karibe sansara basana mor abetu chohabe.
Araka benitai chanda karuna koribe samsara vasana mora kabe tu chahabe
Vishaya chadio kabe shudahabe mana habe hama herabo Shri Vrindavana.
Shaya chediya kabe suddha habe mana kabe hamaharama Shri Vrindavana
Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti Kabehama Bujabo Shri Yugala Piriti.
Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haibe Akuti kabe hamaja bhujaba Shri Yugala Priti
Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yara Morasha Pratana Koroje Sada Narotamada Raghunatha Pade. I forgot that one. Yeah. Pratana Koroje Sada Narotamada. So it's just a nice song. Memorize, meditate, chant. We gave a seminar on this, maybe 2-3 days to go through it nicely like that. So it's a very nice aspect. again, we can't know everything. No, we cannot teach everything we know. So we have to keep establishing priorities. Okay.
Thank you,
Om
Maharaj.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, okay, Bhagirath Maharaj has brought the Ganges into this world. His ancestors' ashes have become purified. They've all gone to heaven. Okay. Okay. Go down here then to our break. Okay. Bhagirath had a son named Shruti, whose son was Naba. Okay. Who was previously described. Had a son named Sindhudvipa. Had a son named Ayutthaya Rituparna. And the question again, this maybe somebody can answer later on. Who taught gambling to you to steer? Somebody know right now who taught gambling to you to steer? The Mahabharata describes it. Yeah. Nobody knows. Okay, we're gonna
What is
find
the
out
question?
that. Who taught gambling to you to steer? When they were in their nirvana, the forest, somebody came and said, "Hey, if you're gonna gamble, you should know how to do it right." And later on, he was able to win when he was playing. So the names sound familiar, Nala, and and Rituparna. Okay. So Prabhupada says gambling is also an art. We have chess at that time was also gambling. You roll the dice, and then there would be like, you get some different random activities for your chessboard. Of course, chess is a very popular game. You can make a lot of money. They just finished off the Tata Steel Invitational Chess Champions, and there's a new world champion now or something. Yes. So, but it's very much in the mode of passion, Kshatriyas and Balaram, you know. Uh, so therefore, it said Balaram, he's very enthusiastic in sporting activities, but not always very so expert. Kind of giving a lesson to us, that chess and drinking sake, Kshatriyas may do these, but okay. As devotees, then we can avoid these things. Maybe we take up Kshatriya activities and we don't have to eat meat, we don't have to drink wine. Although things get tough when you're a Kshatriya, and maybe a little bit of wine in the evening be justifiable for some people after killing people all day. King Parikshit said, O Sukadeva Goswami, why did Vashishta, the spiritual master of Shodasa, curse that great soul? Okay. Then it tells the story of how I think he killed one Rakshasha. Rakshashas, of course, are a race, like rabbits, cats, dogs. These are all races. And it's the whole question of how they assume gross bodies or don't have to assume gross bodies. So Lord Brahma, as we understand, is only attached to his body of knowledge, his intelligence. He can cast off his mental thoughts just like that. Others are attached to their mind. Others are attached to space. Others are attached to certain species are attached to texture, fire. And coming down like that, they can take on and give up certain things like that. Some people may be able to take off their overcoat and their jacket, but not be able to take off their shirt. Okay. Something like this and that. So anyway, it's a race. And I think it corresponds to trolls. In our Western culture, we have trolls. Prabhupada says Gandharvas, fairies. And there are many things looking at the history of fairies in the West, which match up very much with the Gandharvas. So trolls, he killed one of them. The brother got revenge, of course we know, by cooking, meat and offering it to Vasishta. And Vasishta thought Shodasha did it and unfortunately cursed him. Vasishta seems to have, some kind of attachments. He ends up in these things. But when he saw what he'd done, he'd cursed an innocent person, and he did austerities for 12 years. And to get free from, from these activities. King Shodash was going to then curse Vashishta, but his wife wouldn't let him do it. Dhruva went crazy killing yakshas, but then somebody stopped him. So this is Kshatriya Dharma. We have to understand it's different. Kshatriya, it's hard for him to control his senses and mind compared to a Brahmin. And so therefore, quite naturally, he takes care of that by surrounding himself by a good wife, good ministers, other people, grandparents. And so they expect them. They throw themselves into this stuff and they expect that these family members and other people, their social entourage, are going to correct them and help them. So they can't live without this social network. But Brahmanas, they can be austere. That's why they're more powerful. They can just be with themselves. So his wife forbade him to do it, so he didn't curse Vashishta, which is probably pretty good. So then he acquired the propensities of a man-eater. He got a black spot on his leg, so he became known as Kalamashapada, Kalamasha. Yeah. Then, of course, there's a story. He saw a Brahmin culture engaged in sexual intercourse in the forest. Yeah. And he ate her husband at that moment. And she was very disturbed by all these things. Of course, this is the 9th canto. We're starting to seeing all things in terms of Krishna. You know? And so then she asked, she offered very, very nice prayers, kind of like Vasudev offering advice or making prayers and offering reasoning to the Kamsa to try and save Devaki. Okay. Narottam Das Thakur is sung. Hari Hari Vipale Janama Gunainu Manusha Janma Paya Radha Krishna Nabhajiya Janiya Sunina Vishakoina. Okay. So human body is very rarely attained, and therefore all these steps are there: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And therefore, her reasoning is quite rational in some sense. That yes, what we're doing is actually fully Dharma and is fully required, and so you should not engage in interrupting these things to eating my husband. Okay. Yeah. She goes on like that, very beautiful prayers. Here is the highly qualified Brahmana engaging in performing austerity and eagerly desiring to worship the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul, who lives within the core of the heart of all living entities. So Prabhupada even calls, what's his name? Sukracharya, Guru. He says Sukracharya, Guru. So it seems that if somebody is a Brahmana and knows Brahman, and one place Prabhupada says a Guru should at least know his relationship with the Paramatma. Okay, so a Brahmana who knows that the Brahman has form, that Brahman has different kinds of actions, reactivities, and nature, intelligence, the way Brahman deals with things. Okay, he's appreciating the hand of God in things. One of our Jewish friends, a professor, he said, Hanuman Swami, for most Jewish people, God is a person, but he's so great you can never catch up with him. He's so great you can never, have a personal relationship. You can see his footprints, you can see his hand and things like that. So this is Paramatma, realization he's describing in their culture. So she's describing he's a very nice Brahmana, but he's not worshiping Bhagavan apparently. He wants to, appreciate the super soul and be in tune with him. Then of course Prabhupada quotes the description of what a Brahmana is in the purport. Okay, they can all chant this together with our microphones closed. Close your eyes. Shama Dhamma Tapo Socham Shantar Arjavam Eva Cha Jnana Vijnana Astakam Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. Hansaduta told us, unless you know this verse, you're not a Brahma. So, Sama, Dhamma, Tapa, Shocham, Shantir, Arjavam, Jnana Vijnana, Astikam. Okay. So we should know the word by word meanings. Equally opposed, self-control, doing austerity is cleanliness. Arjavam. What that means, I forgot what it is. Okay. Peacefulness, self-control, Dhamma, austerity, Tapa. Shocham, Shuchi, purity. Kshantir, tolerance. Arjavam, honesty. I didn't get that one. Jnana, wisdom. Vijnana, knowledge. I put it the other way around. I would say that jnana is knowledge and vijnana is wisdom. And astikam, religious activities. Okay. So this is this Brahmana, and she's making very, very nice appeal here. So we can appreciate this. My Lord, you are completely aware of religious principles. As a son never deserves to be killed by his father, here is a Brahmana who should be protected by the king and never killed. How does he deserve to be killed by a Rajarshi like you? Okay. And of course, Prabhupada expands on this in the purport. If you have any questions about these, just note them down. You are well known and worshipped in learned circles. Wow, even though he had the tendencies of a Rakshasa. How dare you kill this Brahmana, who was a saintly, sinless person, well versed in Vedic knowledge? Killing him would be like destroying the embryo within the womb or killing a cow. Prabhupada recommends Parashara's Dharma Shastra in the purports where Bhishma Dev is giving instructions to Yudhisthira. To my mind, those are the best summary we have of Varna Ashram. Those two purports, just Prabhupada extracts it from the Mahabharata and gives an excellent description. But he says the Brahmanas should guide the kings based upon scriptures such as Manu Samhita and Parashara's Dharma Shastra. So we thought, okay, let's find that. They're in Berkeley. We went to the University of California Library, and they have 1 million books in different libraries and storage. So it became very exciting because there were some things listed on the card catalog, but they were in Devanagari. So finally, there were like maybe 5 librarians. They were all like looking in different places, and it was like, make my day. It was such an exciting thing to try and find this book for this guy. And so finally, one of them screams, "I found it! I found it!" And they all ran over. It was an old little wooden card catalog sitting in one corner, which cross-referenced stuff, and she found it. They were all like smiling and congratulating her. So I was in the main library. It was in the law library. So I thanked them all and went across the campus to the law library and looking for the code. And I got down in the second basement, not just the first basement, the second base was all steel walls in these cases. And I went along there, and the University of California Law Library had one shelf, which was Hindu law. Hindu law. Then I'm going along, and I finally found it, Parashara's Dharma Shastra, which is also on our webpage. And probably says the Brahmanas should know this, to guide the kings. So I pulled it out, and I think it was 1896 translation by the Asiatic Society of Calcutta. And as soon as I pulled it out, and the steel wall, one door opened in the steel wall. I hadn't noticed it. And so the guy came out. He was kind of nodded to me. And he was locking his door. And he said with a German accent, he said, "Oh, you're interested in the Vedas, And I said, "Yeah." And he kind of nodded in his head and smiled and said, "So am I," and walked away. So it was a total bizarre experience, tracking down this. But so many interesting things which are quite applicable to ISKCON, But in there it gives atonements for different sins. But it says for that woman who voluntarily aborts her own embryo, and of course maybe there's medical necessity. That's something else. It says for that woman who voluntarily aborts her own embryo, there is no atonement possible. He gives atonements for different things else. She should be driven out from her community, and what to speak of talking with her, if anybody even sees her face, they become sinful. Oh my goodness, what a world we live in, Okay, so she's laying a heavy argument on him. Killing him would be like destroying the embryo within the womb or killing a cow. Okay. Prabhupada says in the purport in the Amara Kosh, and there's also the Nirukti, it's another dictionary he quotes. He's giving like an explanation or a support of this point. So here's a very nice argument this lady's given, and it's given in India. We deal with people sometimes in India who these arguments are going to be very appropriate for. We can give them these, and they can read them and say, okay, I'm convinced. Okay. Yeah. And Prabhupada is pointing out, he says, the crude atheistic understanding that the living entity is a combination of matter belongs to the grossest ignorance. So right away, Prabhupada is relating to the current acharyas, the current philosophy, which is science. In different times, it's been mystic yoga, it's been smarta Brahmins. At the time of the 6 Goswamis, almost everybody was smarta, so there had to be so many rituals given, to worship the deities and so on, which Prabhupada says are unnecessary. But now he's relating it to the scientist, and we should be able to deal with these things and explain, how it's not just a little chemical cleanup. Some young man and a young woman are engaged in activities, and she says, "Oh my God, I'm pregnant," and he says, "Oh, here's $100. Take care of your little problem." But it's not a little problem. Sometimes you may deal with people like this, and I've dealt with them. One girl was coming to our temple in San Francisco, and she was a high school girl. She was inner city, and she's talking to the girls, and after a while she became confidential, helping with them. And at 17 years old, she'd already had 3 abortions. And she said, "Well, I don't care." But you could see she cared a lot. Basically, her life was ruined. And she had that heart, she knew it, But she's an innocent person caught up in this scientific philosophy. And all the scientific philosophy is telling you, "Oh, don't worry, it's just like a disease or a virus, get $100 and take care of it." So very, very, strong purports in this area. Without my husband, I cannot live for a moment. If you want to eat my husband, it would be better to eat me first. But without my husband, I am as dead as a good body. Purport. So these are wonderful purports for our book on Sri Dharma. Who's ever going to do this book? The prayers by the wife of the Brahmana to Saudas. Okay. So Sri Dharma, very controversial point. She says, Prabhupada says, in Vedic culture, there is a system known as sati or sahamarga, in which a woman dies along with the husband. And Prabhupada says, a woman without a man is a dead body. So we can go up and show it these women's rights movements, and with this slogan, "A woman without a husband is like a dead body," and probably we would become dead bodies very quickly. The strongest place of feminism that I know in the entire world is Chile, Santiago. It goes from militant women in crowds with football helmets on, have motorcycle helmets on, starting fires and beating people, up to the level of very intellectual, very cultured ladies, like Simone de Beauvoir or people like that, who have very intelligent arguments, and they're quite willing to discuss things with you intellectually, And of course, they're the leaders and ideals for the militant, girls. So Prabhupada didn't have to face this as much as we're facing it now. So I think it's very important to study these prayers and the attitude in Prabhupada comments here. What is our position? What does Prabhupada say actually? And then we have to adapt this into the modern world. Okay. So I mentioned Parasara's Dharma Shastra. There's a lot of things on Sri Dharma there, which I could also mention later if you want to know more about it. Okay. Men must show proper example, or women and their followers will not be able to understand. Okay. This is the fact too, is that women should act like this, but we say, ladies are less intellectual, and generally speaking, they need an example usually. Let's study by that. Okay, so how can you criticize them then if they're starting to form their own organizations to protect themselves? It was quite understandable. Okay, if nobody's protecting you, do that. Form organizations of women. Get control of salaries and things like that to give yourself a decent life, But so they can see that it's a better deal if they are protected by men, but then the men have to set the proper example. Okay, some Sri Dharma here, which is external. Being condemned by the curse of Vishishta, Shodasha devoured the Brahmana exactly as a tiger eats its prey. Even though the Brahmana's wife spoke so pitiably, Shodash was unmoved by her lamentation. Oh my goodness. Okay. And I have down here that Rakshasas are trolls, I think maybe, and Gandharva probably says that Gandharvas are fairies. Okay. You can also maybe discuss how tigers eat their prey. I know something about that too. Purport. This is an example of destiny. This is a very, very nice word for introducing the concept of karma into our industrialized society. Because this people, destiny is karma, they say, oh, karma, I don't believe in karma. You can do what you want to do. I'm a karma mimamsa philosopher. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the weightlifter, was a karma mimamsa philosopher, but I think in his old age, he's actually changing his views a little bit. His idea was that whatever you wanted to do, you could do it. You could accomplish it by effort. Even if there is a God, he will just give you the results of your karma. That's all he does. So destiny is a very nice word. It's a very nice concept, and there's a lot of resources in our Western culture, modern society, to introduce this idea, and people will accept it. I can give some of those examples if you want. King Sodas was contemned by the curse of Vashishta. Okay, and therefore, even though he was well qualified, he could not restrain himself. Okay, yeah. So happens to devotees, because we're not pure devotees. We're also being impulsed by our karma. Somebody from South India has a hard time. I know one my disciples asked for it. It was a long time, very nice devotee from South India, but he would stop eating garlic, and then after a month, 2 months, even 3 months, he's back at it again. And he was saying he knew this was not permissible. So finally, then he finally conquered his garlic attachment. Somebody else may have a grosser attachment, but what's the difference? It's all kind of karma to some degree. So these anartas, anarta nivritti, they're all gone then? No, they're not all gone then. Yeah, some of them will remain all the way until Bhava. I think it's mentioned someplace else. In Arta Nivritti, you can wash the golds, very, very sanitary. There's no coronavirus on the gold. Wash it like anything. Okay. But the discolorations, what are those discolorations? There are different kinds of oxides and alloys. And only when you bring the gold to boiling, you can boil them off. So only in Bhava Bhakti are we really going to get free from all of our attachments. One of our disciples, Lakshmanagra Das in Peru, maybe he's listening right now. Also, they're broadcasting, I think, this in Spanish also. Or not in Spanish, but our devotees from South America. Well, welcome. Yeah, anybody else who's hearing this in the future. Even if we're dead in the future, we hope this is of some benefit. So he said he was a monk. He was a Catholic monk, and he went through the different stages. And they had a spiritual master, they called him that, guiding them. So he said one of the young monks was very agitated sexually, desires coming. So one time he asked the old monk, Catholic monk, we're all celibate, do these sexual desires ever go away? And the old Catholic monk looked at him and said very seriously, he said, yes, 10 minutes after you die. So Prabhupada said exactly the same thing. Some of these desires are going to be there until the very end because of the birth we've taken. But if we engage in devotional service, we can tolerate them. They won't influence us. I'm in the material world. This is a good reminder of what this nasty place is. Okay, thank you. But we'll be able to go on with our service. Okay, that's destiny. Okay. What else happened here? Oh yeah, Ekashmadas. Okay. Ashmaka. Yeah. Ashmaka means the child born of a stone. So now it's talking about how he was free from the curse, but he couldn't have children by Madhyanti. So then Vashishta begot a child. First he curses his disciple, then maybe it was considered a good thing. It was a generous thing, giving his wife a child. Even in the time of Leonardo da Vinci, if a younger brother died, then the older brother would take his wife, would marry her, and give her children if she didn't have children. So, of course, this is one of the 5 things forbidden in Kali Yuga. But it appears to be a very common thing. The older brother begetting children and the wife of the younger brother's sister, especially if he dies. These are things that are very universal. This is part of the Virat Rup. This is the way the world works. Okay. Ashmaka. We mentioned Ekashma already. Okay. From Ashmaka came Balaka. Okay, gone down to Mars Katvanga. So Mars Katvanga is, of course, a very large part of this chapter, and probably we'll find him mentioned in other Puranas, maybe even the Vedas he's mentioned. Okay. So he was requested to fight for the demigods, and this is a fight on a higher level. The cockroaches, if somebody turns the light on at night, they're exposed to this light. They got to run like mad, to hide. They can't see anything, but they can maybe have a light sensor, in that body. All the experience of light is light or no light. And they run off trying to follow the track of their odor, or they lay down or something. It's a very gross body, very horrible body, like a vegetable almost. So they run away, but they don't know why the lights come on sometimes. In the middle of the night. They're used to these, what call sunlight cycles maybe. So when the demigods start doing things, we don't know why. For example, the weather's like this, what's happening. The devatas are doing things, and sometimes they're engaging in irregular things. And so irregular things may happen to us down here on Bhumandala in Marchalok. So he could give up his dump truck. He could give up body, come out of his dump truck, come out of his clothes, and go into his bathing suit and go swimming. So he was able to go to this higher level and fight with the demigods. And from that perspective, he was such a pious person. And of course, he couldn't be defeated. He was undefeatable, unconquerable in any fight. Yeah. Okay. So Maharaj Khatvanga is an example in performing devotional service. Prabhupada says his example is brilliant. So Prabhupada, when he's recording that, must have been saying it with great emotion. The example of Maharaj Khatvanga in performing devotional service is brilliant. Prabhupada, what appreciating all these things. The Bhagavatam is in his heart. Maharaj Khatvanga engaged himself for only a moment in devotional service to the Lord, but he was promoted back to Godhead. Therefore, if one practices devotional service from the beginning of his life, surely he will return home back to Godhead without a doubt. So even before the child is born, ladies sitting together, pregnant ladies sitting together and reading the Bhagavatam together and stories and stuff, and the children are hearing. The child in the womb is hearing. It's just something there. The mother, not just a bag of chemicals. Tremendous influence. So we all have to thank all of our mothers, if they've given us this benefit for those during gestation to have this influence. Then you come out, of course, the mother has so much influence. Then after that time, by the time she gives the child away to the spiritual master at 5 years old, and to the wife of the spiritual master, so much is already fixed, already determined whether or not you're going to be a good devotee or not. In many ways, but what your mother did for you, like that, and so on. So very, very big role. Which is a bigger title, mother or sannyasi? Like that. They're both necessary. In Bhagavad Gita, Asangshaya is described here. Okay, Maya Sakta Manaparta Yoga Yunjam Marashraya Asangshayam Samangramam Yata Jnashasi Tachanu. And now here, O son of Prata Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you will know me free, full from doubt. 7.1. At the end of this 6th chapter, he recommends to become a yogi. Beginning of the 7th chapter, then he describes how to do the yoga. Janma karma chame devyam evam yo veti tatvataha chaksva deham punarjanma naiti marmati sarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and disappearance does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world. Tatvataha. This is knowledge in truth, not just like theoretical knowledge, but we actually have experienced, what it means to be a Brahman. We've experienced ourselves how we can be, above the modes of nature. Things can be happening around us, but the more we're fixed, the more we're just not influenced by them. Other people becoming angry or greedy or lusty, but a Brahmana, samadama, taposocham. And so then we can begin to understand the deity. We can begin to understand different things like that, and we can see how Krishna's nature. And if we absorb in that nature, and of course that is our, as I go, yad yadat charatish. No, what's the other one? I what it is. It'll come back. Yeah, whatever, yam yam vapi. Yeah, yam yam vapi. Whatever consciousness we have, whatever bhava we have at the time of death, whatever Krishna consciousness we have, that will be our next destination. Therefore, translation, Maharaj Khatvanga thought, even if my life is dearer to me than Brahminical culture, missed it back before. Okay. Okay, the example of Maharaj Khatvanga. Okay. Okay. So he was told, you only got a moment to live. And he said, not even not even my life is dearer to me than Brahminical culture. So we put the point that here is Kshatriya Dharma. This is the point. The Brahmanas are attached to Hari, to being truthful, honest, attached to Hari. That's their Dharma. That's their karma. That's their nature. It's not anything to be glorified. I have heavy sannyas karma. I'm very renounced. Okay, there's nothing to glorify me for. It's my karma. But I got it for some reason. Okay. But he's, as a Kshatriya, they realize that by being attached to Brahminical culture. Kshatriya knows the scriptures, but doesn't lecture on them, doesn't teach them formally. Maybe doesn't know them to be able to express them that way. But Kshatriya arranges all kinds of programs, lectures, everything else so that the Brahmanas can do their work. And then he feels full satisfaction. Not even my life is dearer to me than Brahminical culture and the Brahmanas, who are worshipped by my family. What then is to be said of my kingdom, land, wife, children, and opulence? Nothing is dearer to me than the Brahmanas. And of course, Prabhupada quotes in the purport, close your eyes. Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha, Jagaditaya Krishnaya, Govindaya Namo Namaha. Such a nice verse. A devotee of Krishna is very attached to Brahminical culture. Okay. But we understand that it also can be an impediment. People become attached for the wrong reason, a Shukracharya or something like that, or Gopal, what's his name, who's cursing people. Then it can be an impediment. But we're very attached to it, want to see it operating properly, but we still, even in the end, we have to transcend that and make friendship with a devotee. The devotee may not be a Brahmana. Okay. Coming down here, 44. I was never attracted in my childhood by insignificant things or irreligious principles. I did not find anything more substantial than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So maybe somebody can talk about this. And you ask people, in your childhood, were you naturally attracted to spiritual life, spirituality? Were you kind of restrained in the activities of the people around you? These are kind of common stories in Uddhava's life and Narada Muni's life, but even from previous life, there's already some indication like that. Maharaj Katvanga provides a typical example of a Krishna conscious person. Okay. Stavara Jangamadeki, Nadeki Taramurti, Sarvata Hoyanija Ista Deva Sporti. And my eyes closed there. Said Lord Chaitanya talking to Ramananda Roy. And Ramananda Roy says, you're Krishna himself. And Lord Chaitanya says, Stavara Jangamadeki, Nadeki Taramurti, Sarvata Hoyanija Ista Deva Sporti. Yeah. The pure devotee sees his Istadeva to everywhere. Bahir Nisingho, Hridaye Nisingho. Yeah. Everywhere he sees his hand, he sees his activity, he sees his energies, he sees his expansion, he sees his beauty. Like that reminds him, I'm the taste of water, I'm the fragrance of the earth. And very, very satisfied. He sees his Istadeva everywhere. He sees the material world, Lord Chaitanya is saying, Prabhupada is saying here, but he sees everything. Now, he sees that the only substantial thing behind all these things is the Supreme Lord. Okay. So Prabhupada says the devotee engages everything then automatically, constructing large temples, everything according to our means, and then he's not a part of this material world. Isha Vasham Idam Sarvam. Okay. Then they have a comment. What do you want for lunch? And I was noticing after that this process, even for a slow learner, and I really feel that Prabhupada it's only because of Prabhupada is so kind that I'm in this movement and I'm making any progress. I mean, I'm so selfish, greedy, dishonest, hypocritical, trying to use everything to get my benefit out of it for what I can, for my body. Okay. Prestige, everything, my enjoyment. Yes, sir. Still doing it. But Prabhupada just doesn't give up on us. Keeps on pulling us, So how can we not try and help other people if Prabhupada being so kind to us? But making some progress. I noticed at one point, you're sannyasi, you're traveling, and so many people ask you, what would you like for lunch, Maharaj? And it's just that I feel uncomfortable. It was awkward, what is this? Then I realized that I I didn't want to have anybody cook for my body. You know, to quote one of my friends, this body has never done anything nice for me, so why should I do anything nice for it? Okay. Okay. So with that kind of attitude, it was, But then I would just think, okay, well, they're asking me what do I want to offer to my deities? Lord Sringadev is our Istadevata here. Travel with him a lot. So, then it becomes very comfortable. Then I think, well, what Lord Sringadev like? Okay, he's a kind of greedy guy. He likes to eat good food, and he likes macaroni with tomato sauce because it reminds him of Hiranyakasipu. I think. So it's a humor, a feeling. Sringadev so many years, but it's different than Radha and Krishna. Radha and Krishna's clothes on the altar are different than Gaura-Nitai's clothes and Jagannath's clothes. They're just so much finer when you're worshiping them. So many things. So if you have your Istadevata, and at some point, yes, you're just spontaneously starting to see more and more. Okay, maybe not 100%, but maybe 85%, 90%. What does Krishna want for lunch? And every day you're meditating. Okay, what's the menu for today? And you're thinking, okay, well, we'll offer this and that, and that was too much yesterday, Sunday feast yesterday. Okay, So this is the way that Maharaj Katvanga, was seeing everything in the world. Nothing more substantial than the Supreme Lord. 45. The demigods, directors of the three worlds, wanted to give me a benediction. I did not want a benediction. I'm only interested in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm more interested in him than material benedictions. Prabhupada says, our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore called Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha, the association of persons who are simply satisfied in thoughts of Krishna. So this is, I've always wondered where this is, because Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness movement, but in the West, this word is not a very good word in some ways. But the Hindi thing is Antarastrika Sri Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. So this is exactly what Prabhupada is talking about scientifically when he's talking about consciousness. It's bhava, the preliminary stage to prema. And of course, bhavanamrita may actually even be indicating directly into prema. As far as I understand, two ways to say sangha. Sangha is the association of devotees, and the sangha is the institution. So it's very interesting here that sangha is the institution. Even in Buddhism, is the same way. The sangha is meant to serve the sangha. And so the GBC is meant to serve the sannyasis. And I point like that. Okay. Create controversy. 46. Okay. The demigods have always nice facilities, he says, but even they can't realize God, So what to speak of us human beings? So why should I want any of their benedictions? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All the other attempts are more or less material. They're recommended for other people like that. Even within Krishna consciousness, we can use yoga, we can use jnana. We're using it right now, but it has to take us to the point of bhakti like that. Okay. So Maharaj Katvanga is in one moment, he can give all this up and become focused on anyabilasita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam. Yeah. Therefore, I should give up all my attachments. Okay. Yeah. And just become completely detached from everything and surrender to the Supreme Lord. If we do this, we'll probably start looking like mad people. We won't be completely in tune with the world. Someone like Prabhupada as an acharya was having to come down to act properly, so that he could reach out to ordinary like civilized people. Other than that, you just become distracted. You can see Prabhupada sometimes he's chanting on his beads when he's preaching to somebody, then they'll come back, preach again, and like he's dealing with a naughty puppy. He'll chastise them and stuff, and they'll go on. He'll go back and chant a little bit. He'll come back again. You can just see he's going, back and forth between the spiritual and the material world. So if you surrender completely at the time of death, everything else, then your consciousness of your external body and everything else is completely gone. You're like crazy. Okay. So he was seeing all the material world as an illusion. Okay, there's Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natika being quoted. Okay. So he returned to his original position of eternal servitorship. Okay, and Prabhupada quotes in this purport, Jivera Swarabhai Nichera Krishna Das. Of course, these are also in terms of the controversy of the origin of the jiva, if it's possible to fall from the spiritual world or not. There's another discussion there. We'll finish off here. Okay. Okay. Yes, that's the end of the chapter. Yeah. Finish off with a very, very nice verse glorifying the Supreme Lord. You know, he's not impersonal. Okay. So any questions or comments by people then about this section of the Bhagavatam or other things?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, pranams to you.
Hare Krishna, pranams to you.
Ram Krishna Das here from Middle East in UAE.
Okay.
Maharaj, as we saw in this ninth canto, and especially in these sections so far, we have seen so many different dynasties being mentioned with the very prominent kings and their activities and so on, as well as their kinds of consciousness, sometimes in a lower modes and sometimes in a slightly transcendental modes, as we see different kinds of kings. How is this actually acting as a prelude for the next canto, in which we are going to actually unveil totally to a transcendental consciousness? And why is this? Is it like kind of a filter to say that those who are unqualified just get drop off over here? Is that the kind of a nature of this ninth canto? How is it actually understood?
No, I was listening to Maharaj's presentation last week, and he was saying this is called the black canto. Sometimes, I've never heard Prabhupada or read anything like what Prabhupada explains this explicitly, about why the 10th canto, which apparently is Krishna's throat. But by the time you start getting to somebody's throat, they're really, risking you. That's everybody knows that's very dangerous thing. You guard that. Narayana said, if you got a jewel, you keep it by your throat. So Giriraj is keeping, Radhakund, the peacock, keeping it under his throat like that, guarding it very nicely. So my speculation is kind of what the same thing you're saying. It's this, maybe again, because also again, Maharaj Parikshit's the audience, and maybe these names are not, because he appears in this dynasty. That may be part of the fact that Maharaj actually appears in this dynasty. And at his time, this is a big thing. Now in the modern world, some communities, going to this, some communities in America, their standards are so bad that, that they, what is the biggest day of the year? It's Father's Day or something, because people, or Mother's Day, because they're starting to become matriarchal because they can't even trace they're not even sure who their mother was associating with, so they can't even trace back one generation who was their family in some communities. What, to speak of 2 or 3, myself, I can go back barely three generations a little bit. My mother was a little bit more into it, but other communities, this is a very serious thing. You're coming down through a line, and maybe an Indian family, what's his name, Ravi, Rasaraj Das. Rasaraj Das from the Bhaktivedanta Institute. We had many years association. And he was coming from Sri Vaishnava family. One of his cousins was Pujari for the Ramanuja's body there in South India. And he said when he was growing up, his friends wanted to get into these new things. They were watching cowboy movies in English and all these kind of things, He says some of his friends started drinking alcohol, then eating meat, some of the Brahmin boys, But he said he just could not push himself to eat the meat because he knew his family had been vegetarian for 32 generations. They could claim that we have been vegetarian for 32 generations at least, And so he knew if he ate meat, it'd be the end of it. He would be just destroying this 32 generation long tradition like that, And maybe knowing that some stories about different people, what our family did, and so forth, so on. So that's one suggestion. I would say that maybe that because Maharaj Parikshit is participating in this, and I have a suspicion he's heard all this before he ever heard it from Sukadeva Goswami, And when Sukadeva Goswami is going down through it, Maharaj Parikh is going, yes, 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 yes. Oh, yes, really? You know, so that's one aspect of it. And he's only asked for, the descendants of Vaivasvata Manu, just like he asked for the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu. And he was given those, and he heard the Krishna consciousness in terms of them. And it's only because he asks another question that we expand out on Krishna and Balaram and get the 10th canto. Other than that, maybe Sukadeva Goswami is just going to pass over it. You know, it's like you click on the computer, you click on the plus sign. so Maharaj Parikh says, wait a second, what about, so 89 chapters open out, you click it again, and we go back afterwards to the descendants afterwards, like that. So that's the only perspective that I can give. And that maybe by this time it's understood that you're understanding all these people in terms of Krishna consciousness. That these are, when Vashishta is cursing somebody, you've got to understand that these are the final anarthas that we're going to have in our heart. Hansaduta told us, the Prabhupada said, every single psychological circumstance you can encounter in Srimad Bhagavatam. So go through it, you may find out as you're reading about Vashishta, you may say, yep, that's, I got some Vashishta in me. I'm really pure. I'm very powerful. People, want me to do sacrifice. People always want me to lead the kirtan, give the classes, But hey, I become angry if my honor is insulted and this and that. And I like having good dakshi, So we relate to by Vashishta. And with the very, very last, we're seeing it how it is. And then maybe 9th canto, all these elevated personalities, we're finally seeing how they all are, understanding them, understanding the problems, and then we're ready like that. So it's almost what you said, but I don't know any specifically any more than that. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. So kind of you.
Okay. Be careful who you curse. Yes. So.
Hare Krishna, can I ask a question?
Yes, Anantagore Sundardas. Yeah.
Maharaj, in the beginning of the 2nd canto, we find Sukadeva Goswami encouraging Parikshit Maharaj by telling that Khatwag Maharaj.
You're going to have to pretend like you're talking on a 1970 Indian telephone, long distance. If you separate your words more like separately and stuff. I'm losing my hearing from 73 years old, and also the connection is not so intense. So if you can talk very clearly, sir, then I can understand what you are saying, each word.
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, in 2nd canto, beginning, we find Sukadeva Goswami encouraging Parikshit Maharaj by telling the pastime of Khatwag Maharaj that he perfected his life in few moments. But the way prayers of Khatwag Maharaj we hear here, we find that it seems that he has practiced devotional service even before. So how do we understand that he perfected just in few moments?
Oh boy, what is devotional service? Boy, subtle point. Tamal Krishna Maharaj makes this point. This is one of Prabhupada's big words, devotional service. Another one is Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are words that Prabhupada is kind of like defined, like Ramanuja picks certain words and define them, beat on them. So Prabhupada is defining devotional service, I think, as Anyavilasita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Anukuyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. He's taken, that's what he means when he says devotional service. So was Maharaj Khatvanga engaged in devotional service before this moment happened? Or was he engaged in Brahminical activity? You can engage in devotional service as a Brahminical activity and not really realizing you're worshiping God. Yeah. I know many Indians like that. Also Christians, the same way. It's just God is love or something, and they kind of talk about the personality of God, but not much. It's kind of pastimes and everything else. And for example, one very big Christian preacher, I forgot his name, will come back now. He has 10,000 people in his church, and over maybe like 30 years, 40 years, he's spun off 32 more churches. This is a Maha-acharya guy. And Vaisheshika recommends reading his book called The Purpose-Driven Church, which is just incredible about how to organize churches and everything else. And to a large degree, their idea is that God is pleased when you do your civil duty for him. This is the Tattvavadis, no? If you're a brahmachari, then you should be a good brahmachari, and that pleases God. That's devotional service. If you're a wife, you should be a good wife. If you're a policeman, you should be a good policeman and do it for God. So that's one level where they understand that God, is satisfied by, and Lord Chaitanya rejects this, no? With Ramananda Roy. Okay, take sannyas. This is your service. Okay. So I would say that's probably what's it, the Maharaj Katvanga. As Krishna's lining everything up, and finally he gets him in the right position, and bong, he got him. He got him at the last moment of his life. Right around, everybody said, "Oh, we're going to miss him." And Krishna says, "No, wait a second. I'm ready." Okay. So he caught him at just the right consciousness, just the right moment, and he realized everything. And before he could slip off the table, Krishna got him. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah. Krishna's a very tricky pool player. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate. Yeah, one last question. Okay, so tomorrow, we're doing pretty well on schedule here, which satisfies my German mentality. My grandfather was immigrated from Germany. So then tomorrow, we can start pastimes of Ramachandra. And I should finish it off and get it off to you so everybody can have it, the same way, doing it the same way, going through and highlighting. And taking your notes, if you have any questions or comments, so maybe the same way we can go through each part, and after each section we can ask questions and stuff, like that. I was supposed to have one question here. I forgot what it was. Anyway, so thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sitala Madhavi, Subhashini, Narottamananda, Ananga Mohini, Ravi Gopal. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hanumatpresaka Swami Maharaj ki jai.